views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. We're so excited about the upcoming Women of Wisdom event, but more importantly, excited about people that are bringing messages in the world that represent a level of empowerment and a level of awareness, that perhaps you might be thinking, yeah, I've heard it before, but now it's being said in a totally different way. Joining me today is Normandi Ellis, and you just heard Nicki Scully on the show. They have both co-authored a fabulous book. For many of you, you know what it is, The Union of Isis and Thought. And today we're going to be talking with Normandi about what does this mean? What are the messages from the ancients? What are the messages from the Egyptians? And what is it that she has found in the hieroglyphs? And what is it that we can now pull from some of this and translate it into our modern times? Today, it's so great to have her joining us today on the show. She's the author of 13 books of fiction, spiritual nonfiction, and poetry. She guides and travels through ancient Egypt. And she's also co-facilitating a pre-conference workshop with her co-author, Nicki, at the Women of Wisdom Conference, February 16th to 20th. Today, it's great to be exploring this journey with her and find out what are in the messages and what are we missing? Normandi, it's great to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
Sometimes we refer to magic and initiation or initiation practices of ancient Egypt. And I wanted to talk about the idea of magic. And the reason I want to talk about it for a minute is that I don't really know of another culture that we have associated either magic with or transformation with as this culture. I mean, clearly, if you turn on a movie, by the way, we're even doing a remake of the movie The Mummy with Tom Cruise. So there's something going on here, right?
Right. Oh, that'll be something to see.
So I wanted to talk about the event you're doing. What is the importance of the workshop you're doing and in its relationship to the world we live in today?
Okay. I like your question about what is magic, because I don't think that the ancient Egyptians, they didn't define it as magic. They simply defined it as natural law, the way the world works, And those are things like the law of vibration, that thoughts are things, and as Nicki spoke about, that our language creates our culture, that our environment, the place that we put ourselves in, defines who we are as a people, and that creates a vibration, that spaces themselves have certain vibration patterns, colors. We know all of these things. And the ancient Egyptians knew that. We know them because it came to us kind of through the back door, through the Greeks and the Romans. And then, we got some of it when we were studying the East Indian traditions. A lot of these have, they have like commonalities in it. I teach a class in the basic unity of religion, and everywhere I go, I finally looked at the ancient Egyptian as being the source spot for a lot of what we think of in our communities. There are passages in the Bible that are directly lifted from ancient Egyptian texts for the festival. So, things have little fingers in every pie. And so I think that it's best to think that magic is simply being able to listen to the way nature, or as Nicki calls it, Neter and Neteru speak to us through the environment in which we live, the animal messages, and what is the wind when it kicks up high? It creates a feeling in us. That in itself is a message of slow down, go within, all different kinds of things that we get our spiritual messages from. And there is a god whose name is Heka, and he is a god, we'll call him the god of magic. Mm-hmm. He is the connection that we have between not only our language, but our intention. Okay, and so magic doesn't work if your language and your intention are not the same. And if your intention is the same as your language, but you say that's not your intention, you're actually doing what we would call, in this culture, a black magic, because you're putting up a veil about what you think and what you're saying you're doing. So I think it's really important for us, as we live in our community, and again, as Nicki said, to focus on the ma'at, the truth, the cosmic order, the foundation of the world. What is it that we wish to build? What kind of society do we wish to live in? And if we can live in accordance with our true beliefs and walk the walk and talk the talk, then that is magical practice.
One of the things that I wanted to have you share and talk about, and Nicki did touch upon this a little bit, is the use of hieroglyphs as oracles a little bit. And I asked Nicki to please share, because a lot of folks don't really know what an oracle is. And certainly they may not at this point know what a hieroglyph is in the way that you both talk about them. But clearly we know symbols when we see them. We may not be able to connect the dots, but we certainly have become aware. More so, I think, than many, many other cultures, we become aware of these. And I would love for you to talk about, one, what is or what can we learn from this? Okay.
I think it's a good idea to think of it as a hieroglyph is a symbolic language, but it's not just a picture. And many people, they are tattooing themselves with eyes of Horus and wings of Isis and Ankhs. We're wearing it as jewelry. We understand that those are important symbols that relate to a state of consciousness. Okay, so that's really what it's working at. Now, all hieroglyphs are a state of consciousness. Not only do they work as symbols, but they also work as sounds or vibrational tones that set us into a frame of mind through the particular work that's coming in. And these hieroglyphs, which have been meditated over and prayed over and are the original spiritual language of this planet, really, have the ability to move us not only in what we think and what we say, but to tell us ancient stories, to click into our mythology. People, it's amazing to me that people who don't, it's been like 3,000 years that they work the magic inside the hieroglyphs. And people who are not readers of hieroglyphs will tell me, I had a dream the other night, and there was this bird, this hawk that came and landed on my arm, and it was a little scary. He had the face of an old man. And I said, oh, that's interesting. That's the image of a ba bird, the image of the soul in the ancient Egyptian tradition. So she doesn't know that she's dreaming, but a ba has come to her. And so I said to her, well, that's interesting. What did he look like? What did the old man look like? Well, he looked a lot like my father. And I said, really, is your father in spirit? Because that would have been the first thing I thought. And she said, no, he's not in spirit. He has Alzheimer's, and he doesn't remember me. Yeah, and I thought, oh, yes, he does. Wow. And so the symbol and the story and the power of that image of the soul as, a human-headed bird took its winged flight through her dreams, and impressed itself upon her. And so those hieroglyphs, which have been set into the world, 5,000 years ago, are still resonating to this day. And people really don't know why they're so drawn to a particular image.
Well, I mean, I think this is really what we're talking about. But, I also mentioned that it really is true. They are literally going to do a remake of the movie The Mummy. And I think our fascination has to go beyond our pop culture. I would like to ask you, because I know that you've traveled. I know that, this is so much of your life, right? This consciousness. Yeah. What is the consciousness that we are subconsciously connecting with?
When we remake a mummy?
when we remake a movie called The Mummy, because I got to tell you, the business people are saying that's a bad business decision, but it's going to happen anyway.
Right. Well, I think that one thing it does is it shows that even though we think of ancient Egypt as a culture that's over and dead and done with, and we don't have to think about it anymore, it's not true, you know. And I think also that what that really is about, and I'm going to interpret this as if it were a dream or a symbol, okay, were this mummy from my childhood that frightened me so much when I was a little child and I watched it, and it's coming back around again, probably what I'm tempted to do now that you mention it, Pat, is I'm going to go back and look at my astrology and see when that was made and what was going on astrologically, because that's a cue to what the psyche is of the culture right now that would want to remake a movie like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because in the world we're living in, people really are not really out there making mega movies about that. But it's coming up again. And I wanted to ask you, the world has led you to travel into the mysteries of ancient Egypt. And I am so wanting you to share a bit about your own personal journey and what your calling has done to change your life. Because, many of us are called to do a positive talk radio show. Your calling has been to tap into this ancient mysteries. And I would love for you to share a bit about your journey, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, it's been a 30-year journey, in fact.
Yeah.
A long time. I think that when I first began this, I began becoming interested in what we began calling the mysteries, to start with. When I was a young woman, I realized that the way I felt and the way I thought affected my reality, and I wanted to know why that was. And so I started reading a lot of books by a number of different people like Dion Fortune and a lot of theosophical writers, early writers. But then Egypt, it sort of came and got me. It wasn't like I read it in class. I had a friend who said, here's the Book of the Dead, pulled it off a shelf and said, here, you buy it, and, I want you to read it. And I thought, why? And then I ended up translating it. After my friend died, I thought, that's why I bought it.
Wow.
So then I translate this book. It takes me 10 years. And I completely learn how to see the world in a very different and a very vibrant fashion. It was no longer entertainment. The world was no longer entertainment for me. It really was about, where do I find spirit? How do I talk to spirit? What does spirit want from me? And it's been a matter of putting one foot in front of the other and simply saying, okay, that's what I will do. And learning hieroglyphs taught me everything about learning to listen to what spirit was trying to teach me. And eventually, it led me to Camp Chesterfield, where I live right now, and I'm a clairvoyant minister, spiritualist minister.
Yeah.
So, working with the dead has been a thing of mine.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, let's take a minute and talk about the dead. I think one of the most revered stories, if we could tell it, would be about the dead, but through the eyes of Isis. And I would love for you to talk about, this idea of ascension and ascension in terms of, what the ancient Egyptians are bringing forth. And I think in the book you both talk about the ladder of ascension journey as well.
Right. I was just reading about the Jacob's ladder this morning in that other tradition. And they're very, very much the same. Nicki alluded to it when she said that there were rites of passage in which an enlightened person, being in this case the Pharaoh who had studied and devoted his life entirely to figuring out what does the divine want from me, okay? And so this person undergoes a life and death, kind of like a shamanic initiation. They are probably put into a trance, I would assume through some kind of plant substance, and they are left for 3 days inside a place of burial, an initiation chamber. And when they have to unwrap themselves when they awaken, and they have to read the hieroglyphs that teach them how to move up the ladder of ascension, and in this shamanic state, go and talk with the divine beings and their ancestors, and say to them, show me the plan, and then show me my position in the plan. What am I to do to move my people forward? Because it really wasn't about them. It was about the whole culture itself. How do I move my people forward? And that is what makes a culture last 3,000 years, not self-aggrandizement, not personal policies, but what can I do for my people? And that was the purpose of that shamanic initiation. And it happened every 7 years. The Pharaoh would undergo this experience, which was a shamanic death during the Hebsed. That's basically a Jubilee festival. And it, again, if you go looking at astrology, every 7 years, that's part of a Saturn cycle. We change who we are every 7 years. The 7-year-old child begins to go to school. The 14-year-old child, is entering into teenage years. The 21-year-old, is entering into adulthood. The 28-year-old is completing a cycle of childhood and beginning his adulthood. So it's an important cycle, these every 7 years, where you undergo an initiation. And your guest previous to Nicki was also talking about, it being a 1 year. And so we can think of what we went through in this dark time where we are now in the calendar as part of that shamanic initiation, where we're being buried in the dark and awaiting a resurrection and a renewal. And, for me, it's not so much about, what book do I want to write, or, how many miles am I going to run this year? Yeah. It's really about what step can I take that by the end of 2017 is going to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And that really is what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'm so glad you said that because, I think there are so many people that are sensing it and feeling it. And, here we go now with the 25th annual Women of Wisdom Conference, right? Mm-hmm. Remember who you are. Honoring ourselves, we heal our world. I want to stop for a minute and talk about that. Honoring ourselves. I love this. I love what Chris has put together here because honoring ourselves, we heal the world. Sometimes we have a sense that healing the world means we don't do anything. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking, well, what if Rosa Parks decided not to do anything? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
I don't think that's what we're saying. And you're not putting on a 2-day intensive workshop for women to say, no, let's not do anything. Because that would not represent, Egyptian culture or any mystery, would it?
Right. No, and I think that it's true that we have to be, what can we do? Who are we as a collective as well as an individual? And what can we as individuals and a collective bring to this culture? And I think we're in an important place right now. I mean, we're going to bring a new person into power, and he's not just president of our country. He's going to have a global influence. I'm over there in Egypt, and I'm listening to the Egyptians talk about what they think this means to them, for good or ill, and they're of divided opinions as the country has been, So, but I think it behooves us all to think about, what can I do? And how can I do it in little ways? And how can I do it in big ways? In a little way, Rosa Parks was just tired. It's like, no, I'm going to sit down.
Exactly.
I'm going to sit down. And in a way, I don't believe that she thought it was going to have that impact, but she had just had it, and it was just enough to push it over the edge to where people said, hey, she's right,
Yeah. But, even if she didn't think it was going to have an impact, it had an impact on her life. It had an impact on her. I mean, and this is, I think, what we're all really sensing and searching for this year is, what is it about redefining courage, where we can include courage from a spiritual perspective, but know that there is a question that we can explore, a mystery question, when we tap into whatever the divine means to each of us. And that question might be, what is mine to do today? Right? For you, you're going to come to the Women of Wisdom conference, you're going to deliver a message, but more importantly, you're going to be, both of y'all are going to be the mentors of women that are going to be with you during this time. And I wonder what that feels like for you. What does that feel like for you? What most excites you about this upcoming event and that particular experience?
About it is that there will be people there that I do not yet know, and I do not yet know how their work in the world is going to shift. But in the years that I've been doing these workshops, I've seen people come back to me, and they'll even say things like, you may not remember me, but, and I think that that's really important, because whatever I said at that moment, they took it and they ran with it.
Yeah.
And, they did something wonderful. And I think I'm most excited about where, 7 years from now, this is all going to land, That's what excites me. The idea that somebody is going to be set on fire somehow, and I don't even know who it is yet.
I know. Wow. Thank you so much for today. Would you mind telling folks how they can find out more about you and also about your work in your books? Thank you for today.
Oh, thank you. Yes. I have a website, NormandyEllis.com. And they can look for my books there. I'm published by Inner Traditions. I'm really happy to say that Awakening Osiris, that book of hieroglyphs, has been in print almost 30 years now.
Nice.
From Red Wheel Wiser. And so you can find all the books and stuff on the website or on Nicki's website at Hathor's Mirror. In terms of workshops, I'll be doing, of course, this one in Seattle, and then I'll be teaching at the Great Lakes Retreat in July. I'll be teaching in Michigan. I'll be doing some work here and there. I kind of am a movable feast, so you'll find me on the website. If you want to know or sponsor me in your area, email Ellis, Isis, gmail.com. And check the website, campchesterfield.net, because that's where I live, and I teach in the metaphysical school there. I'll be teaching metaphysical journaling and astrology classes and basic unity of religion and spiritual writings from around the world. So, yeah, check that out.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank all of you for tuning us and turning us on. Please go to the drpatshow.com. We'll see you next time.
I tried to swim against, put me down to pull my knees. Oh, I beg and please.
The preceding audio was via a Skype call.